State Farm.
Have you compared insurance rates lately? Are you satisfied with your current insurance provider? If not, look no further than Ray Felton State Farm, a proud sponsor of Sports on Tap. For a free quote, call his office at 234-284-2996 or visit him online at rayfelton.com.
Whether you're hosting a corporate event, wedding, conference, concert, or any other special gathering, our comprehensive range of services will exceed your expectations and elevate your event to new heights. RRT Productions. We shoot, we edit, you win. Visit our website at www.rrt-productions.com.
Hand and built leather goods. Leather goods built for life. Made by hand in the USA, all goods are made with veg-tanned leather. Some of the best quality around and made by a U.S. veteran. Check out their website, www.handbuiltleather.com.
We've got the experience, the passion, and the beach to make your event a smash hit. Whether it's a romantic wedding, a lively sports venue, or a rocking high school dance, Troutland Entertainment has you covered. Contact them at 330-414-4261 or email them at troutlandent@gmail.com. That's troutlandent@gmail.com.
To Sports on Tap. This is our summer spotlight. My name is Ed Dick, alongside Rob Troutman, Josh Jeffy, Noah Jacobson. Sean Duffy is out on assignment. You're watching this live on our YouTube channel at Sports on Tap. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at SOT Podcasts. You can also check us out on Spotify. Our website is sportsonpodcast.com, and you can send any sort of emails to sportsontap.podcast at gmail.com. You heard Rob before this show. You heard Rob talk about all of our tremendous sponsors, so we thank them for sponsoring the show as well. And we're back at it. We're starting to get back into the swing of things here over the course of the next few weeks and months as we're preparing for the high school football season. We're going to go a little bit outside of our normal realm of high school football and kind of go around the rest of the sporting world. And there is really no better authority of Lorain County sports than our guest tonight. Right now, you may know him as the voice of the Cleveland Cavaliers on the radio broadcast, but he spent plenty of time at WEOL 9:30 a.m. If you've been listening to the Medina County and or the Lorain County matchups over the years, chances are you've heard him. He is part of the Lorain County Football Coaches Hall of Fame, the Lorain County Boys and Girls Basketball Coaches Association Hall of Fame, and the Elyria Area Umpires Hall of Fame, and of course he's honored by the Ohio High School Basketball Coaches Hall of Honor. We are lucky to be joined by Tim Alcorn, joining us from his road trip experience, filling in for Hammy for the Cleveland Guardians broadcast. So, Tim, thanks for taking time not only out of your off season, but apparently you're in season too with the Guardians.
Yeah, you're right. Spent the weekend down in Miami with Jim Rosenhaus, calling some Guardians baseball. Had a wonderful time, and was really honored that the Guardians reached out to me and asked me to join Jim for the broadcasts. And so I flew back from Miami this morning. So hopefully I've overcome the jet lag, and we'll have a fun conversation. Anytime that I have an opportunity to talk high school sports, my background in high school sports, and even current high school sports, I relish it because I'm wired with high school sports. It's in my DNA. I did it for so long, and I still keep track of the teams. I still listen to the games on the WEOL mobile app and on WEOL.com, and I had great relationships with all of the coaches and the athletic directors in the Lorain County and Medina County area. So when you guys extended this invitation, I said, absolutely. I'll come on anytime and talk high school sports and my career in that. And if you want to talk a little Cavaliers and perhaps some Guardians, we can do that as well.
Love it. Yeah, we absolutely. And that we'll start exactly there. You were with WEOL for 27 years. Before then, you're at WOBL. So talk about your experience throughout. You did various things. You were your station manager for a while, but as a station manager, you got lots of roles and responsibilities. So talk about your time at WEOL over the years. I mean, I know there's probably a hours of that we could fill there, but WEOL is such a big part of the high school football and high school sports community, and you're a big part of that.
Well, I was a part of it. I don't know if I was the main cog, but yeah, I certainly was blessed to be at WEOL for a long time, and really probably never would have left if they had decided to keep me. I'll put it that way. But when the Cavs job came about and the opportunity was presented to me, it was tough to turn down NBA basketball. But to your point, I came out of college. I'm a Kent State grad. I'm a proud Kent State alum, and graduated from Kent State in 1985 and started at WOBL in Oberlin. And actually, WOBL, when I was in high school, I actually went to high school in Lorain County at Midview. And okay. WOBL had broadcast sports and the like. And but by the time I graduated from Kent State, they had stopped doing that. And literally a month or two before the high school football season was to begin, right about this time of year, they saw that I had done some sports down at Kent, and they said, we did high school sports a few years back. And I said, sure, I listened. And they were like, well, would you like to crank this thing up again? And of course, since I was a little guy, that was my dream. I wanted to be a play-by-play guy. And so I'm like, sure, I can get some schedules together and put something together as far as a broadcast schedule. And so I dove right in the summer of 1985, right after graduating. And so had some great times at WOBL. Really found that to be a good foundation, and then moved over to WEOL in 1992. And they already had a tremendous tradition and an outstanding background in covering high school sports. So really what I did there was just join a radio station that already had a rich tradition in doing high school sports, but tried to take it to the next level, I guess, if you want to use that term. Continued with the high school football and really expanded the high school basketball coverage, including girls high school basketball. It was something that didn't get a lot of coverage at first when I got to WEOL, and I thought, these young ladies play just as hard as the guys do, and they deserve coverage. So we added that. And then I don't know why, but I thought, well, spring sports would be fun. Let's do some baseball and softball. And boy, I spent a lot of cold, drizzly, rainy days out there on the diamonds in Lorain and Medina County, but loved every minute of it. As we mentioned, I just got done finishing up the Guardians, and I love calling baseball. I really do. Basketball is my passion, but really love calling baseball and even softball. So just tried to take that coverage and build on it. And, one of the things that I used to always say to the people at WEOL and our advertisers and the like was, just because it's high school sports doesn't mean that it can't sound like professional sports. We wanted those broadcasts to sound as big as possible, as professional as possible. There's no reason why a Brunswick and a Midview or an Elyria and a Lorain or whatever the schools may be can't sound like an NFL game or an NBA game. You want that sound to be as big as possible. And so that really was probably the thing that I'm the most proud of, not only the expansion of the schedules, but the production quality. We really aimed to ramp that up and make it sound as top-notch as we could. And I think in the end, we were able to do that.
Yeah, that's very interesting that you say that, Tim, because, for us at Sports on Tap, we live stream high school hockey games, which is, not very prevalent around this area. And getting to do that, we've got to know some individuals who have the same kind of dream as you to make it sound, even though it's high school, sound as professionals as possible. So that's a goal for us. Now, in your time covering high school sports, what are some of the major differences that you've seen? I know you're out of it now, but you still keep heavy tabs on it. What are some of the differences that you've seen as you've gone into your career and moved forward?
From the coverage aspect?
Yeah, just from like the radio / live stream aspect of covering high school sports.
Yeah, well, that's a great question, Josh. And obviously, the technological advances are just incredible. When I started out at WOBL and even the first few years at WEOL, the internet was a figment of somebody's imagination. So if you didn't have a radio in Lorain County and Medina County and maybe even into the western part of Cuyahoga County, you weren't going to hear the games. And again, that was just old school. That's the way it was. And so even though the audience was limited, you still tried to do whatever you could to make those games sound as big as they could. And then once you got into streaming of games, it just exploded. You became not just a local county radio station, you became countrywide, worldwide. I remember when I was at WEOL and my parents had already moved to Florida, and the first couple of years that we started streaming games, it just blew my mind that my mom and dad could listen to me doing an Elyria game or a Midview, or as I said, whatever the school may be in Lorain County, North Ridgeville, they could listen to that. Down in Florida. I mean, it was just mind-boggling to me. So that's really been the biggest change. Just the fact that, yeah, you're a local station, but really you're not. You're streaming out there to the country and to the world, and so it has just expanded the audience exponentially, and it's just been wondrous as far as the coverage is concerned for those who want to keep in touch with their schools. I remember doing so many games, and I'm sure you guys have had this experience where somebody has moved out of state or grandparents have moved away, but they want to hear their grandson or granddaughter play. And one of the things that would always really, sitting there broadcasting a game, put a lump in my throat was when we'd get an email or we'd get some sort of shout out for someone serving in the military. And they were overseas and they just wanted to hear their local high school football game or their local high school basketball game. And that used to just really, really move me because you thought, wow, here's a young man or a young woman serving our country. And yet they take the time wherever they may be in the world to listen to a high school game. And so the whole streaming component has just blown things wide open as far as the coverage aspect is concerned.
Tim, thank you for taking the time and joining us tonight. And it's such an honor for me at a young age talking to you. I kind of want to talk about Joe Tate because a friend, a father figure, and a mentor who've been the voice for the Cavaliers for so long, for 39 years. Just kind of talk about some of the many stories he has taught you and some of the many lessons that he has taught you into the person that you are today, being the play-by-play voice for the Cavaliers.
Yeah, no, this could become a 3-part podcast if I started telling all the Joe Tate stories. In fact, just to my left here is kind of my Joe Tate shrine. There's pictures of Joe and I and all the many games that we covered together. I'll give you a quick story. Might take a couple of minutes, but I grew up in the New England area. I did not move to Ohio until I was a junior in high school. I mentioned I graduated from Midview, but my first 2.5 years in high school were actually at a high school in Massachusetts. And growing up in New England, I knew, as I said earlier, just from a little guy, that I wanted to be a sportscaster. And as I also mentioned, back in those days, there was no internet. So as a young kid, I had a radio next to my bed and I had a radio out in the garage or whatever. And I would just go up and down the dial looking for ball games, looking for any game. If it was the winter, I was looking for basketball or hockey. And if it was the summer, I could pick up different baseball games from around the country. And but living in New England, I listened a lot to the Boston teams. I'm not a Boston fan in any sense of the imagination. I'm not a Sox fan or a Patriots fan or anything like that. But at that time, 3WE, which is now WTAM 1100, just boomed into New England. It had that 50,000 watt signal. And I could get it as a youngster clear as a bell. And I would listen to the station in Cleveland, Ohio. It would seem like a million miles away when you're living. I actually live north and south of Boston. But I heard this guy, Joe Tate, calling games on this station in Cleveland. And I thought, man, this guy is just incredible. And so I would listen to Joe. And then through a set of events, I ended up moving to Ohio, as I said, that junior year in high school, and then ended up going to Kent State. And the very first media credential that I ever got for any game, I was at Kent State working at the student radio station. And I got a credential to see the Cavaliers and the Boston Celtics at the old Richfield Coliseum. It was the first time I ever wore a credential around my neck. And I walked into the media room, and sitting together at a table, having a cup of coffee before the game, was Johnny Most, the iconic, legendary radio voice of the Celtics, and Joe. They were sitting there together. And it was a surreal moment in my life because here I am now at Kent, but flashing back to when I was a youngster in New England, listening to Boston sports and listening to Johnny Most and, of course, listening to Joe. And so I walked over to the table, and they both kind of looked up at me like, who's this kid that's coming over to bother us? And but I did a quick introduction and just told them both that I had listened to them growing up and really admired them. And that was my career choice, I guess I should say, or ambition to become a sportscaster. And I just thanked them. And I went to walk away, and Joe said to me, "No, you sit down right here. Sit down, young man."
Oh, wow.
And I was like, "I don't think so." These are two Hall of Fame broadcasters. He goes, nope, you walked over here, you sit down. And so I was stunned, but sat down and talked for a few minutes and told them about where I lived in New England and now in Ohio. And so as Joe and Johnny got up to do the game, Joe looked at me and he said, Timothy, he always called me Timothy. Joe Tate never once called me Tim. Timothy, are you calling baskets at Kent State? And I said, I've done a few games. And he said, send me your work. I want to hear it. I'm going to help you along the way. And I was just flabbergasted. And from there, this relationship developed into something that was just extraordinarily close as the years and the decades went on. I graduated from Kent in 1985. So that was in the spring of 85, my senior year at Kent. And we maintained that relationship. We became best of friends. He was a second father to me. And the words of wisdom that he offered through the years, again, I could go on for hours, but score in time, be as descriptive as you can. Don't be afraid to have some fun on the air without turning it into a comedy show. You're not there to make people laugh and make people, feel as though that they've gone out to see the local comedian, but you can have fun with it. Don't be bashful about that. And just so many other things that, he would listen and he would call me up. And it was interesting before I got the job with the Cavaliers. I asked him to listen to something and he goes, nope, you're just fine. I don't need, he would listen to me, but he at that point in my career, he was satisfied with where I had come with my play-by-play, but he was an enormous influence on me. I'm not embarrassed to say that. People, I'm sure, think, well, you're copying Joe, and I'm not copying Joe. I hope people don't think that, but he certainly had an influence on me.
What a cool story. And I know Joe Tate, I mean, he's somebody, I called some games at Bowling Green. I did baseball, basketball, and some football, and I know him and Tom Hamilton were guys that, I looked up to, and it's easy to not try to do the same thing, but then you wham with a right hand. How many times have you heard that? Or welcome to the Coliseum, before games.
Well, yeah. Well,
I mean,
Rob, yeah, exactly. After the national anthem of our hockey games, these guys got a vouch. I always say it's basketball time at the Coliseum.
Yep, exactly.
Because that's just something you do. And Ed, too. Ed has a little Joe Tate story. Go ahead, Ed.
Joe, as I think you're well aware, he called Mount Union football games
for years.
In fact, I wanted to ask you if you had the opportunity, or if he extended the pleasure of maybe calling a game with him over at Alliance, Ohio, there at Mount Union Stadium. I know he did that for years, but I played there in 2002 and 2003, and I went in there. I think it was a freshman. I was a freshman. And I was the backup place kicker. I had played free safety as a senior in high school in addition to my kicking duties. This is after Rob and Josh had left and they let me hit people. So I go out there and I didn't exactly have kicker uniform on. I mean, I look like Joe comes out. He goes, "All right, here's that Dick. Kind of, he's a kicker." He goes, "Looks more like a linebacker to me." And I think it's for an extra point, which I didn't make, so I was pretty happy about that. One of my cousins was listening to the games. My parents were at the game, and he relayed that story to me. I was like, man, that's super cool. Just like you and Rob and Josh, and I think Noah might have been a little too young for it, but maybe he remembers a little bit. But I grew up listening to Joe Tate all the time. Especially on the West Coast, you're going to sleep listening to Joe Tate call a game against Golden State or Sacramento or the Lakers or the Clippers, what have you. So when him and Terry Pluto were collaborating on their book, they asked for stories. So I wrote that. I typed. I don't know if I hand wrote a letter or sent an email, one of the two. I sent it in, and I initially got a letter back that said, "Hey, this was a great story, but it didn't make the cut. We'll send you a book though, just for contributing." I said, no problem. That's cool. I mean, the fact that they even looked at it was great. A little bit late, maybe a few weeks later, I got a second note, and it said, "No, that's our fault. No, that we didn't mean to send that one to you. You actually did make the book."
Man.
So they sent me a book. They sent me the book that it's been what was it? It's been a ball. It's on my bookshelf. I think I'm on page like either 200 or 198. Just things of memories of Joe, and I think it says something along the lines of, I relayed the story and said it's just so cool. Listen, someone that you listened to growing up, the voice of Cleveland, that took whatever time out of their day while calling the game to give you a quip about yourself. Just something as simple as that, like that meant the world to me, and it's obviously it still does. So, that's a big thing for me from Joe Tate.
Well, the beautiful thing about Joe, and there were so many things, and that again, my Joe Tate desk is over here. That book's on the desk. But the beautiful thing about Joe, and he would love something like this. The technological aspect of it, he was no big fan of that. But as he said, he never got out of the Eisenhower decade. But he would love that you guys are covering local sports and talking about high school sports. Joe would come up every year with me and do a high school game, and I've tried to continue that with the affiliates that we have on the Cavaliers network because it's special to the kids. It was so special to me as a local broadcaster. And one of the things that I said after Joe passed was his name was perfect because he was an ordinary Joe. And I mean that as the ultimate compliment. He made it to the NBA, but he never forgot where he came from. He was a small town guy. Grew up with railroad tracks right behind his house. He had an absolute passion for railroads, but he never forgot his roots. And that's why I said he would love something like this. He'd be joining you talking about high school sports. And I can still remember walking into gyms with him. This is outstanding. He'd look around and the smell of the popcorn and the pep band, and he just loved every minute of it. And you made a great point that, he always took the time. He always took the time. And so, again, that's something that I've tried to do as young broadcasters approach me or send me audio to listen to. That's a pay it forward type of thing. And, I've been in those shoes where you're out covering high school games and you wonder, is anybody listening to this? But, you asked earlier about valuable lessons. Joe would always say to me, Timothy, don't think nobody's listening. Somebody is always listening. It could be 10 people, it could be thousands, but don't think nobody's listening. And I never forgot that because you always try to bring your 8+ game. And so that was just one of the many valuable lessons. But, it's interesting. You talk about listening to the West Coast games, and where I broadcast the Cavalier games from, at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse is called appropriately the Joe Tate Perch. I broadcast from the Joe Tate Perch, and I can't tell you guys how many times during a commercial break I'll just sit back and think about me as a 10, 11, 12-year-old kid listening to the announcer out of Cleveland. And now I'm sitting in that chair, and I think about that a lot. And it has an impact on me. So you're right. Somebody's listening somewhere. Little did Joe know when he was calling the Cavs games in the mid-'70s that there was some kid in New England listening to him. But there was, and it grew into this passion for broadcasting and an incredible relationship.
Well, and Cleveland has had, I feel like, so many great broadcasters. I met Tom Hamilton. I know Joe Tate, you look up to. Jim Donovan was a great guy.
Yes.
Nev Chandler was another guy.
There's another one.
That was
Casey
great.
Coleman.
Casey. I mean, it goes down the line of so many great broadcasters in the Cleveland area that have been here. When you were growing up, was there a broadcaster that you're like, oh man, I love it? I mean, there's plenty of them out there, but was there one broadcaster that you're like, God, I love listening to him, and I want to be like him when you were younger?
Well, it would have been Joe.
Okay.
Because growing up in New England, there were some awesome broadcasters in the Boston market. I could rattle that off for you guys and your viewers, but it wouldn't mean a whole lot. But I mentioned earlier Johnny Mose, Gil Santos, Bob Wilson. did the Bruins. So yeah, there were Ned Martin did the Red Sox. There were iconic broadcasters up in Boston. Kurt Gowdy, the famous NBC broadcaster, got his start in Boston. But once I moved to Ohio and really did the deep dive into becoming a broadcaster, Joe was the guy that not only mentored me, but that I listened to and that I tried to draw things from. But you mentioned Hammy. I've become very, very close with Tom Hamilton. We've become great friends. And Hammy's another guy. And Joe, it's interesting. Joe loved Hammy's work. They didn't really know each other very, very well. I was kind of the conduit between the both of them. But Joe, 2 or 3 times a week during the baseball season, would call me. Timothy, did you hear what Tom had to say today? It was hilarious. He loved Tom Hamilton. And I think the similarity between the two of them was just their passion and their energy. They both, Joe and sure Tom currently, they draw you into that broadcast, the energy of it. And so, you asked earlier about lessons that I've learned. Listen, if you're doing a football game, it's 42-0 in the third quarter. You just can't go to sleep. Like, hey, like Joe said, somebody's listening. Or a baseball game that's 8-2, 7th inning. Hammy's still bringing it. I mean, he gets excited about things, and I think for young broadcasters, that's a very valuable lesson. Just because you're bored with the game, you're like, oh, get me out of here. And I felt that way before too. But in the end, you have to remember your audience, and especially at the high school level. Maybe it is a blowout game in the fourth quarter in basketball, and here come the JV kids. Well, maybe that JV kid's grandmother or aunt and uncle is listening, and they're like, "Oh, Johnny's getting in the game." They're excited about that. So you've got to keep that in your mind that you're going, yeah, here come the JV kids, but somebody's listening out there that's pretty excited about Johnny or Susie playing girls basketball or whatever it may be, that they got in the game. And so you want to bring that excitement to them through your broadcast.
No doubt about that. We've had a few cocky games that have gotten out of hand pretty early, and it's like, all right, well, we'll see where this goes. But to your point, you have to keep the energy up, because for that exact reason. The other team might just had a rough one, or they suffered a bunch of injuries. But if they get that one goal, that goal is the one that you're going to remember, and you got to make sure you're ready for the call and ready to go, and bring the same enthusiasm for that shot and the score as you would for the first 4 or 5 for the other team. It's such an important thing to do, especially for as often as we do probably on total about 10 or 12 games a year. And some of the regular season games could get out of hand just because we're trying to cover a wide variety of teams. But we keep that in mind. We have to, because we have limited opportunities ourselves. So we can't afford to take a break, because we don't know. Sometimes we don't know when we're going to be on again, and it's like you gotta go every single time. And my grandmother was one of those people when I was JV for Vermont Union, and I happened to get in on a varsity game. She got so excited about that.
There you go.
I was the backup kicker for our freshman year. We beat Trinity, Texas, like 48-7 or something like that. And it wasn't because we were dominant that year. No mistake. But the other team was missing their quarterback, who had thrown for like 5,500 yards. He kind of got a public intox after the semifinal game, and he couldn't play. But we would have won the game anyways. Just get that out there. I had one kickoff. And that was it. But my grandmother had watched it on ESPN and maybe listened on the radio, and was so happy. She wrote into Sam Boyer at the Gazette or the Sun Times at the time, and was so happy that I was like the designated fourth quarter kicker. Like, she made up a position for me. But it was a complete blowout, but that's what she saw, and so that really. It really accentuates what you said about someone's grandmother or someone's parent could be listening at any point in time, and that's the point that they see. It makes it so important to give every single player, student athlete, the opportunity to, when they're on the ice or when they're on the court or on the field, to give them your best, because
right.
it's an opportunity for them, and they may not get too many opportunities.
And to your point, you give it your best, because going back, to the lesson of you never know who's listening or where they're listening or why. Somebody may have just gotten in their car in that third period in hockey or fourth quarter in football or basketball, and they flipped it on, and they're like, "Boy, this guy's just dogging this." As far as the announcer, so you never know who's listening. And one of the things that I did a lot as a young broadcaster, and I still do, even though I've reached the NBA level, go back and listen to yourself. And if you find yourself, in a 20-point game, kind of slowing down and not having that energy, you'll pick up on it. So I'm my own worst critic. It was interesting as I did the Guardians games this weekend. I received a lot of texts and emails and so forth, and I was like, yeah, I don't know. I just thought I did all right, but I'm my own worst critic, and I will go back and listen. What did I do? How can I phrase this differently? What can I change? Did I keep that energy level up? And trust me, in an 82-game NBA schedule, that can be challenging. But that's certainly a valuable lesson. Keep the energy up. Don't worry about score and time, except when you're doing the game. But as far as in your mind, energy-wise, that doesn't matter. Just keep bringing it.
Now, you were at WEOL for 27 years, and then the Cavaliers job opened up. How did all that happen? Because, like I said, an opportunity, you don't really see it too often where a guy goes from high school sports to the Cavs, but obviously your experience, you've been doing this a long time. You have how much demo tape did you have to send the Cavaliers? Probably not much with all the broadcasting you've done, but how did that all happen with EOL and the Cavaliers?
Yeah, Rob, it's an interesting story, and it's tinged with sadness, and I always keep that in mind, and I really kept it in mind when I got the job. It was September of 2019. The Cavs were literally less than a month away from starting the season. And John Michael was the radio play-by-play guy at the time, and Fred McLeod was doing television. And very sadly, Fred suddenly passed, actually in Lorain County. And the Cavaliers were really up against it insofar as, Fred suddenly passed. He had a heart attack. And here they are less than a month away from the start of the season. So they really couldn't throw out a wide net as far as, let's see what we can get if we throw it out there that we're looking for broadcasters. So shortly after Fred passed away, I received an email from the Cavaliers. They reached out to me. And basically it was a very short email saying, for sure you're aware of Fred's passing, and we're planning to move forward, or putting together a plan to move forward. Please send us what you have, as you said, audition tapes and so forth. And I remember I was curious about that email, because in my mind, I'm thinking they're probably just going to hire another television guy, right? They'll just bring in a guy to replace Fred and move forward, as difficult as that will be. But as I was to learn, the plan they had put in place was to transition John Michael from radio to television and hire a radio play-by-play guy. And as I said, I was really surprised how many people had listened to my work within the Cavs organization. Now, when Joe initially retired, I had gone for the job at that point, and I actually, from what I've been told and has been shared with me over the years, I was the runner-up to John Michael. So they already were aware of that. But WEOL was a Cavalier affiliate station, still is, on the radio network. And so I had a deep connection with the Cavs. And I was really, once I found out this is the plan they put in place, I still thought, yeah, they're going to hire a guy that's gone, high school sports all these years. But again, I tried to make those high school games sound as big as I could. And so it was the play-by-play aspect of it, along with the sound that I tried to bring to it, that I think in the end I got the job. But it was whirlwind, because they really needed to turn it around pretty quickly. Uh, and it was something that it was challenging that first year because I was joining an organization that was grieving. I mean, Fred McLeod was huge, uh, a huge personality for the Cavaliers and for Northeast Ohio. And so, I didn't want to go in that first year, ringing bells and high fiving everybody that I got the job. It was, Fred has passed, and so, these are some things that have to be, dealt with, and that made it somewhat challenging. But the Cavalier organization has been just wonderful to me, and it was fortunate that I knew a lot of people within the organization when I got the job. That made that transition much easier.
Talking with Cleveland Cavaliers play-by-play for the radio, Tim Alcorn joining us. He of DWEOL and WOBL for quite some time before then. I want to transition quickly briefly back to the high school landscape. Over the years, as either calling games or just being part of various tasks, what are some of the more special or more memorable teams and or athletes that you remember covering over the years?
Yeah, I get asked that a lot. And when you do high school sports for 30 plus years, there are so many teams and so many memories. A lot of Final Four appearances in basketball and softball, a couple in baseball. One of the moments that always stands out for me was my very first year, the 85-86 season, basketball wise. I got hired, as I said, in the fall of '85 to start doing games again on WOBL. But my very first year of doing play-by-play, Oberlin won the state championship in basketball, and here I am, this 22-year-old kid, thinking, well, this is going to be fun. This is going to be really cool if I get to do this every year. And you don't realize, how fortunate you have to be to get to that level. And one of the things that is just a great memory for me is that in the regional final, and again, no internet, no streaming, no YouTube. So you just heard about people. Well, that was Jimmy Jackson's freshman year at Toledo Maycomber, and he already had well over 200 Division I college offers as a freshman at Toledo Maycomber. And he was just this incredible 14-year-old basketball player. He was LeBron in the state of Ohio before LeBron, but you didn't know about him unless you went and saw him in person, because maybe some television highlights here or there. And it's funny, Jimmy went on and went to Ohio State, played in the NBA for several years. Now he's a renowned commentator on basketball, both nationally as well as with the LA Clippers. And a couple of years ago, I saw Jimmy in LA, and I said, I want to tell you a quick story. I go, your freshman year, I called your regional game, and he didn't even let me finish. Against Oberlin, that was a great game, regional final. It's amazing how these guys all remember their high school years. They relish those years. So that's always a special memory for me. But yeah, there's so many great athletes and so many great teams and incredible moments. To try to sit here and really pinpoint them all, I could take an hour. But one of the things that I tried to share with people is, listen, I call the games. I love calling the games. I have a passion for doing play-by-play, but I'm not the star. It's those 15, 16, 17-year-old kids that perform at the level they do and the athletic ability that they put on display. They're the stars. And even though I call NBA basketball now and this weekend MLB baseball, I still marvel when I go out and do high school games, and I'll still do them for WEOL and our affiliates, as I mentioned earlier, at the incredible athletic ability for those kids at that age. And I'm thrilled to do it because I still think it's amazing to watch them do what they do and the coaching that they get. It's incredible.
Yeah, Tim, going back to kind of your career, a lot of people think, I should say a lot of people think, but a lot of people don't realize the work that it takes to actually broadcast the game. So I'm always interested to hear about your preparation, for each of your games through, you've done it a long time, but what is preparation, game prep for you like? And then talk about, you're not there by yourself. You have a lot of people, especially at the NBA level, a lot of people helping you out, making that broadcast sound as best as it can be. So, what goes into doing a game for yourself?
Great question. And it's interesting because this weekend in Miami, Rosie and I were talking about that in the booth as I was putting together stat sheets and lineups and so forth. I literally said to him, I hate the feeling of not being prepped. Really, the old saying, the hay's in the barn. Once the game starts, the hay's in the barn. If you've done all your prep work, now you just call the game. So if you've memorized names and numbers and you've put all your stats in front of you and you've taken some notes and at the professional level, you have game notes, so you're highlighting things through the game notes. But even at the high school level, I would always have some notes about players and a lot of stats. And, you just try to fill those moments within the broadcast. So, yeah, I'm prepping all the time. I mean, on a game day and even before a game day, if we're not on a back-to-back, I'm always working ahead on the upcoming opponent. I can't just sit down in the Joe Tate perch and say, here's a roster and let's go. So, I mean, there are hours of prep that go into it. And to me, when you listen to a broadcaster, you can tell who has just come in, sat down, and thought, I'm going to call this game, because they don't know names. They don't know, backgrounds as far as the athletes are concerned and so forth. A good broadcaster not only will call a good game, but will know the teams and know the athletes and know why they're having success or why they're struggling. So game prep is a constant for me. If a game tips off at 7:00, I've been going through things, like I said, if not from the day before, then the morning of, and just sitting at a table like this or at the kitchen table and just writing things down and going over things and making notes of what I want to say. And it's interesting, again, going back to a conversation that I had with Rosie this weekend, and we both agreed in our careers, you can put down 50 things or 75 things and use 5 or 10 of them. But you over prep, and that's good. I mean, there's nothing wrong with over prep, because, maybe you save it for another day, and you'll think, oh, I wanted to use that, but it's still there, especially if it's a tidbit about an athlete or about a player. So a lot of prep goes into my games, and I hope it comes through on the air, because I want to know who and what I'm talking about, and I think you can tell with a good broadcaster.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you do it, you have, there's times probably you need a lot of filler stuff, so you just don't sit there. And obviously, if the game's going on, there's a long timeout or a challenge, you have some interesting, information about a player or a team. Do you talk to the players before the game to try to get some different information from them, or before the season, and kind of get some of that information, or is it just all in the packets and you just do your research that way?
No, I'll talk to players. Again, at the NBA level, they're a little more guarded about what they want to say and so forth, and I get that, and I'm sure that's coming from the coaches as well. But I also will talk to the coaches, whether formally it was JB or one of the assistants on staff, just saying, what do you think about this, or what's going to happen, if they go with this matchup or whatever. And so, any insights you can gather. In fact, going back to high school, one of my favorite parts of doing high school sports was the pregame interview with the coaches, because I wouldn't just do it, at the gym before the game, or, Friday night for a football game, while they're out warming up or whatever. I would sit down with a coach in his office or whatever a day or two beforehand, and the 6 to 8 minutes that the listeners would hear was just a piece of a half hour, 40 minutes that I would sit with that coach. They tell me about this player, tell me about this, give me some insights. And they knew I wasn't recording it at the time, but it would absolutely help with the broadcast. So as much insights as you can receive, and the coaches and players, they need to earn your trust. I mean, if they tell you something like, hey, not for your broadcast, and then you spurt it out, well, they're not going to tell you something again. So you have to develop those relationships. But once you do that, that will also help the broadcast immeasurably. Absolutely.
Yeah, Tim, going back to when you came to Ohio in 1985, just kind of talk about some of like the favorite Joe Tate calls, because I remember watching that a lot on YouTube, whether it was Craig Elo hitting that game winner against the Jazz or LeBron hitting that game winner against the Orlando Magic in the Eastern Conference Finals. If you could go back to, if you have to pick one memory of like the best call that Joe Tate made, whether it was a game winner or the opening of the game, just one call, if you could name any, what would it be?
Well, Joe would always say, and you just alluded to it, the Craig Elo, yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. Just probably his most famous call, and he had so many iconic calls. As you said, the LeBron game winner with 1 second left against Orlando. But the Craig Elo call, I mean, I can literally recite it, in my head. Elo looking, Elo into Doherty, back to Elo. You hear the buzzer, he hit it. Yes, Virginia. It's just a awesome call, and so Joe could capture moments like nobody else. I mean, he was just brilliant at doing that. But the yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus will probably go down, and then of course. For you guys, long before your time. But if you go back to what they call the Miracle of Richfield, the Cavaliers in the 75-76 season, and, the epic 7-game series against Washington, where every game came down to the final shot and the final possession. Joe's calls during some of those are just incredible, the emotion that he displays. So, yeah, there have been some great ones, but certainly, yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus, the LeBron game winner, as you alluded to, Miracle of Richfield. But I could put together an album, an entire, whatever you guys call them now, CDs, MP3 files, whatever, on the iconic Joe Tate calls, because there were so many of them. Larry Nance blocked a Manute Bol shot. Folks, you had to be here to believe it. Manute Bol and Larry Nance blocked his shot. I mean, there are some that are coming back, and it's just, that's what made Joe Tate so special.
Absolutely.
We're talking with Tim Alcorn, play-by-play, radio play-by-play for the Cleveland Cavaliers. We'd be remiss if we didn't ask you about the Cavaliers. And really going back to when you started with them, obviously circumstances noted. You came in with the Cavs at a very interesting time, and have seen a lot of, you've kind of progressed with them from coming in 19 and to where they are now, and you've seen just the growth and the build. I'm trying to the best question I can ask about that, and I certainly don't. We're not the type of podcast that wants to get into the nitty gritty about what's going to be happening. We want to focus more on really what the positives have been. What's the most positive thing that you've seen out of the Cavaliers since you joined in 2019?
Well, to your point, Ed, it's very true. It's just the growth. This team, when I came aboard, was a very young team trying to put some pieces and parts together. The first year that I was with the squad was the hiring of John Beilein. And I had utmost respect for John Beilein. I mean, an incredible college coach. But as the season wore along, you could see that it was real taking its toll on John Beilein. It was just, he wasn't used to that amount of losing. And NBA players are different than college players, even though college or the Cavs at that time were a young basketball team. But to see that growth, and then of course the 1920 season, which was my first, was stopped short just like that because of COVID. So, but right before COVID hit is when Coach Beilein stepped aside and JB who had been the associate head coach, then took the reins. And you could just see, even in his short time, I think it was 12 or 13 games, that before COVID hit, he was a stabilizing force. He had been around the NBA. His dad, great coach in the NBA for many years, Bernie Bickerstaff. But the Cavs finished with 19 wins, young team. Following year, we got started late because of COVID. We didn't start until Christmas. Cavs got to 22 wins, I believe, that year. The third year is when it really shot up. It went from 22 to 44. The drafting of Evan Mobley, the acquisition of Ricky Rubio, and you could see JB's system starting to be installed. So they get to 44 wins. I have absolutely zero doubt in my mind it would have been more if Jared Allen hadn't been hurt in the later stages of that season. They probably would have been close to 50, if not over 50. But hey, they ended up where they were, and they got beat in the play-in tournament. Last year, the 51-win season, the 51-win season, get knocked out in the first round, but you're seeing the growth. And then this year, you get to the second round of the playoffs. So you're seeing these young players develop and mature. Certainly didn't mean to neglect the acquisition of Donovan Mitchell, where you say, okay, let's accelerate the process. We've got young guys that are growing, like Jared, like Evan, DG, but let's bring in a guy that we feel can take us to another level. And Donovan Mitchell is one of the elite players in the NBA. So you've seen that growth. And now for the Cavaliers, listen, I'm not giving away any big Cavalier secret here. The quest is to get beyond where they've been. So it's been play-in tournament, first round, this year, second round. And so they think whether it's next year or in the very near future, conference finals and NBA finals. So, and that's been fun to watch the growth of the team, to watch these young kids develop into solid NBA players. That really, it's been enjoyable.
Who's going to be the coach, Tim? Come on, who's going to be the coach?
Come on.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
I really enjoyed the Guardians this weekend.
Hey, Tim, if Sean was here, he would have jokingly asked that question. So I think Josh did that instead.
Well, I do have another serious question, Tim. I mean, you said you've grown up in Massachusetts. Where's your accent? Or have you worked your whole career to get rid of it? Or did you not have one?
College got rid of that. No, it's a great question. Because most announcers, especially at the major league level and the NFL level or whatever, they have that flat, I don't know what dialect they call it, but when I moved to Ohio as a teenager, I was asking people, where do I park my car? And so as I said, I want to be a broadcaster, they were like, well, then you got to get rid of that New England accent. So, through various speech classes and communication classes and broadcasting, obviously, it slips out once in a while. You'll hear something New England sounding come out of me, but for the most part, I park my car now. I don't park my car.
There you go.
How about the clam chowder? Were you a clam chowder fan?
Good chowder. Yes, let's have some chowder.
Yeah, Tim, going for this season for the Cavaliers, I listened to you for like a lot of games, and I could just tell the excitement that you had when you had the Max Strauss game winner against the Mavericks and the Game 7 win. Just kind of talk about what were some of the best games that you called this season, and just kind of talk about the excitement that you had, whether it was that game winner or that Game 7 win.
Well, I'll start with the Strauss game winner. I guess that was the first time in my life, maybe the only time, that I'll ever experience going viral. I couldn't believe how much coverage that call got. And it was interesting because if you guys remember, not that you memorized the NBA schedule, it's a long one, but the Dallas game where Strauss hit that half-court shot was the first game after the All-Star break. We had been on the All-Star break. First game is against Dallas, but the Cavaliers were on a back-to-back. They played Dallas at home, and then we flew right to Chicago after the Dallas game to play the Bulls the following night. And it was interesting. I called a half court shot. I really didn't think it was anything special. He let it fly. He hit it. Cavs win. Obviously, I got excited about it because it was just this incredible moment. But I had to make a very quick drive to the airport to get on the plane to go to Chicago, and I didn't have a chance to hear the highlight. I didn't hear the call on the drive to the airport. Now we fly to Chicago. I had my phone off, probably took a quick nap. And we get off the plane in Chicago, turn my phone back on, and it's blowing up. I have family all over the country, and they've heard it on ESPN, and they've heard it here, and it's this network's playing it. And I was like, wow. And I still hadn't even heard it. But yeah, that was just an incredible shot, an incredible moment. And you can't prepare or rehearse for anything like that. Again, way back when we started, we talked about lessons that Joe taught. You try to capture that moment because, as I've said, as people heard the call more often than not, as it got played on ESPN, and I guess the Today Show picked it up, and it was everywhere. But they were watching the video with my call behind it, and as I explained to people, I closed my eyes because I want to know if I captured it for the radio audience. Can you see it happen as I call it? Because I'm looking at it from a radio perspective. So that's what I'm trying to capture. There, somewhere there was a person in a car or they were at work or whatever. They didn't see it. So was I able to capture what Strus did? And then that Game 7, just to answer that question, just an incredible moment. Who knows when I'll get to call another Game 7. And so for the Cavs to rally back from 18 down, and again, just trying to capture the energy of the crowd and just how it built to this crescendo at the end was just amazing. And listen, I get excited. I get passionate about it. I don't necessarily like my own highlights because there are times I think, boy, you get too excited, Tim. You got to tone that thing down. But as the game is going on, you guys know, you just get caught up in it. And that Game 7 experience was just something I'll never forget. That was incredible. I hope the Cavs sweep. But if a few more Game 7s, I'll be happy to call them because that was fun.
Yeah, I think I always loved broadcasters that showed the excitement. Like you said, whether it's an 8-2 game or whatever, I love that excitement. I think Hamilton does it. I think you do it. Joe Tate has always done it. Every broadcaster I've loved, I feel like, has showed excitement in the game, and that's a fun thing. I almost asked if you had any phrases that you worked on, like you're at home and you're like, I want to get this phrase in, because I had guys in college do that. I'm like, you got to just go with the flow and see what happens, so it sounds natural. If you're prepping for that, it's almost going to sound like you rehearsed it 100 times in your room,
Right.
But I
totally agree.
I think your calls are exceptional, and that's the fun thing. I'm sure traveling with the team, you probably have all kinds of experiences. Traveling and getting to call some of these games. It was an exciting year for the Cavaliers, and like you said, they kept making that step. Every year keeps getting better and better. They have some decisions to make this offseason, so I'm interested to see how it unfolds, but you got to be pretty excited. I was a little nervous with J.B. Bickerstaff being let go because I thought every year this team kept progressing, but obviously they know a little bit more about it than I do just watching from home. So you got to trust the front office, and they've done a great job each year. So it's going to be a fun ride, and let's see how these guys do in the coming season.
Well, there's no doubt, Rob. This is a huge offseason for the Cavaliers. It's monumental. It could be franchise altering because they have to get it right on the head coach selection. They'd be the first to tell you that. I think that's why the process is taking a while. They don't want to make this a quick decision because, as I alluded to earlier, the goal is to get to the next level. You're not bringing in a coach to say, you need to rebuild this and, we're going to retool the roster. No, the coach that whoever gets the job is expected to take the team to the next level. There's going to be some pressure with that. So it's a huge hire for the Cavaliers. Obviously, the Donovan Mitchell scenario. That needs to play out. So this is going to be one of those off seasons which will impact the Cavaliers for a long time to come. But to your point, they have no desire now to slide backwards. They've gone from 22 to 44 to 51 to the second round of the playoffs. So they want to keep that ascension going, and they'll be relentless in that quest.
And we'll certainly, along with everybody else in Cleveland and Cavs fans around the world, we'll be looking to see. We'll be paying attention, seeing what they're doing. Tim, we can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk to us again. This has been a pleasure. A lot of us who grew up watching Cleveland sports, it's not very often that we get to talk to people who call the teams that we grew up rooting for and still root for. And so we thank you for giving us that opportunity. And for everything you've done with WEOL as well. This has just been a great way to spend an hour, being able to trade stories and listen to you. So thank you so much for joining us again.
Listen, I admire what you guys do. That's real nose to the grindstone type of stuff, and paying your dues and getting your reps, as they say. You asked me earlier about advice. For young broadcasters, get your reps. Do as many games as you can. Like I said, there were a lot of cold, rainy afternoons that I was doing baseball and softball, and I don't know if that's why this past weekend I was in Miami calling the Marlins and the Guardians, but you know what? You get your reps. You just keep working at it. So anytime I can help guys out that are, and women, a lot of women in the sportscasting field now. So anytime I can help someone out that's trying to make their way. I've been there. I've done that. I get it. I understand it. And anything that I can do to help you guys out, whether it was tonight or down the road, feel free to reach out. I'll be more than glad to help you.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, we appreciate Tim. And it's always great talking to you. And if you ever want to call a high school game, I know you do it on EOL, we'll have to have you on a broadcast here.
Absolutely. Every year when the Cavs schedule comes out, I look at free Friday nights and Saturday nights. I mean, obviously, if we're home.
Yeah.
And say, if somebody wants me to join them, I'll join them. So by all means, that Cavs schedule will come out in August. And if we can make something work, let's do it.
How's your hockey broadcasting?
That's not good.
Yeah, Tim.
Football, basketball, baseball, I'm pretty good. I tried hockey a couple of times.
It's tough.
Those guys might be the elite play-by-play people. What hockey guys do amazes me. I'll stick to the other three.
Yeah, Tim. Just I cover a lot of high school basketball. I can reach that to you and just let me know. These guys have been calling me Dr. Hoops a lot because of the basketball a lot.
That's right.
Good stuff. Get your reps. That's
right.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Well, thanks again, Tim, and we'll keep monitoring. We'll monitor what's going on with the Cavs, and hopefully we can get you back on when time permits in your very busy schedule. Thank you again, sir.
Oh, my pleasure. And anytime, feel free to reach out, and we'll make it work.
Thanks Tim.
Thank you.
That is Tim Alcorn. He just completed his 5th year as the play-by-play announcer for the radio side of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Many years in the high school realm with WOBL and WEOL, and it doesn't get any better than that when you're talking to when we get to meld high school sports, which is what our bread and butter is, with the professional sports world. And Tim is one of the unique people that went directly from without obviously putting his time in, but going from the high school realm to the professional realm with a little bit of everything else in between. It's just the stories, being able to talk about Joe Tate, and I think the 10 or 12-year-old, probably Lisa and me, Rob and Josh, is very, very happy right now that we got to talk to one of the bridges between Joe Tate and current time sports. So just a tremendous podcast here. I was really excited for this one, and I'm almost out of words.
It's just so cool and awesome to talk to him and talk about some of the experiences he's had and the stories. I mean, unbelievable stories that you don't hear all the time, and it's great to get to know him. So just so lucky to have him come on and spend all the time. I mean, he goes to Miami. He gets home, probably sometime today, and then he's on our broadcast. Hopefully he gets some sleep tonight. But
right.
Just a great guy, and we're lucky to have him on.
All right, make sure.
Go ahead. Yeah, definitely, Rob. I mean, what a great interview. I mean, you can't tell. I mean, 5 years with the Cavaliers for doing the broadcast and 30+ years with WEOL. Just can't thank enough for having Tim Alcorn on the show. And just like I was talking about, guys, learning under Joe Tate, kind of like a father figure, a mentor, someone you always want to look up to as a young broadcaster, and kind of like how I'm at the playing at right now, and someone like you want to have like growing up. That's kind of like what what we're doing right now at Sports at Tap. It's pretty special, guys, and it was a great interview.
Absolutely.
Very much so. And with that, we're gonna wrap up here of our first installment of the Summer Spotlight for Sports on Tap. You have been watching us live on our YouTube channel, Sports on Tap. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to get the notifications when we're about to pop onto the air. You can check us out also on Spotify. We are on Twitter/X at SOT Podcast. Our website again is sportsontappodcast.com, and you can send us an email at sportsontappodcast@gmail.com. Rob's gonna stick around for a word with our sponsors afterwards, and then we'll be back at it. I believe next Tuesday. We're to be back at it again. Unfortunately, yours truly will not be on that one, but the guys will certainly have everything covered there. In fact, who do we have going on next week?
We're still working through that to see if we get a few. We have a few potential. Yeah, just waiting to hear back and confirm some things.
Well, then that's a perfect opportunity to make sure you're following us on. It's a perfect opportunity to make sure you're following us on X at SOT Podcast.
That's right.
And check out our website, sportsontappodcast.com, to come back and find out who we are going to have on our show next Tuesday night, live on our YouTube channel. For Rob Troutman, Josh Duffy, Noah Jacobson, and Sean Duffy, and again, thank you to Tim Alcorn. My name is Ed Dick. This is Sports on Tap Summer Spotlight.
Sports on Tap Summer Spotlight is presented by Raymond Felton State Farm.
Have you compared insurance rates lately? Are you satisfied with your current insurance provider? If not, look no further than Ray Felton State Farm, a proud sponsor of Sports on Tap. For a free quote, call his office at 234-284-2996 or visit him online at rayfelton.com.
Whether you're hosting a corporate event, wedding, conference, concert, or any other special gathering, our comprehensive range of services will exceed your expectations and elevate your event to new heights. RRT Productions. We shoot, we edit, you win. Visit our website at www.rrt-productions.com.
Hand-and-built leather goods. Leather goods built for life. Made by hand in the USA, all goods are made with veg-tanned leather. Some of the best quality around and made by a U.S. veteran. Check out their website, www.handbuiltleather.com.
We've got the experience, the passion, and the beach to make your event a smash hit. Whether it's a romantic wedding, a lively sports venue, or a rocking high school dance, Troutland Entertainment has you covered. Contact them at 330-414-4261 or email them at troutlandent@gmail.com. That's troutlandent@gmail.com.
Okay.